Hi everybody, welcome to the latest episode of Flat Out. It's one of my favourite weeks of the year coming up, the Dante Meeting. The flat juices are really flowing now. We're very much well into the flat season and very much looking forward to a wonderful 3 days of York alongside both Joey Labour and Jack Nicol to discuss all the classy action, because it really is a very classy card this year. But first up, lads, let's take a look back and see what happened last week with the classic trials at both Chester and Lingfield. Lingfield obviously a little bit different this year, having been staged on the all-weather, but Chester certainly showed some pretty decent results, particularly in one of those trials with the fillies. Save Your Last Dance, most notably impressive in very bad ground. But I've got to say, before we begin properly, coming to you, Jack, because you not only had a good week last week, but wanted to address a situation with a bit of resting bitch face, as apparently, not that I've noticed, but it has been reported that when myself and Joey are giving our tips, you're just sitting there very unimpressed. So I think that's going to have to change, mate, to be honest.
Well, let's be honest. The results speak for themselves. I'm kind of carrying the team at the moment. 2 winners from me last week. No contribution from yourselves. So no wonder I'm a bit disinterested. Like it's time to step up, lads. I think.
To be fair, you do make a fairly good point, I have to say. But maybe a little more interest shown when we're giving our tips would be, I don't know, a little bit more enthusiasm, possibly.
I'll try and stay interested.
But you must have been delighted with Metier, Saffy Osborne.
Oh, it was brilliant, yeah. And what a race to watch, getting up so late then. It's really nice when it works out like that and you forecast all the rain. No, it was brilliant. And of course, the Wise Eagle link, a massive form boost there. So we're delighted with that as well. And I know Adam was half thinking about running there, running on a bog like that around Chester just would never have suited him. So I don't think we would have won there if we'd went and reopposed Metier. So no, onwards and upwards as far as we're concerned to the Gold Cup. So no, exciting times.
Yeah, very much so. Joey, what did you make of the classic trials last week? Was there one that really took your breath away at all?
Well, I mean, you kind of forced, aren't you, to say that Save the Last Dance was that one, and that overhead shot of her making up so much ground and then going past the others like they're standing still is hard to ignore. You think that she will not get the same conditions on the day. I was impressed by Military Order. I thought that was quite taking performance, actually, despite the fact he got a very nice split. He still went and won the race really well. Even when Ed Walker's horse came to him, he went away again. And I thought that was probably very, very impressive and very good trial as well. So yeah, no, I was. We'll see. I think they're still quite cloudy, the pictures still. I mean, with August Redan still at the head of the Derby market, it's there's got to be something lurking in there at a reasonable price that you'd say that you'd like to be siding with at this stage, because he's taking out a lot of the market for a horse that's completely bombed out on his last start.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, I have to say. Jack, you must be delighted with Military Order, a horse you've been a fan of for quite some time now.
Yeah, hopefully people were following from I tend to follow for the season, but he was kind of the headline selection there. And delighted it's all kind of worked out so far. Addy, obviously, he was beaten in his 2 races before winning the Derby, and this lad's went and won both of his. So it's typical now he'll probably go and get beaten the Derby. I did really like what I saw there at Lingfield. Of course, it was a dream split up, but when Waipiro came to challenge him there at the half furlong, I thought he really asserted and went on, and that wouldn't be a track to suit him. I'm really looking forward to getting him back on the turf, and I'm really quite excited for the Derby. I think I've got a real live one here.
There was something that kind of struck me afterwards. When they said like, oh, he's a finer, quicker model than Adayar. He's like a slighter model. Like, you very rarely hear the opposite, do you? When they go and win like that, you very rarely say, "Oh, he's a slightly slower, more cumbersome version." They're always slightly quicker and faster. We heard it with Point Lonsdale, didn't we? When he said, Aidan O'Brien said at the start of this year, he said, "Oh, he's a bit quicker than Broome. I'd say he's a bit quicker than Broome." And then you go and look at him the other day, and he looks a fair bit slower than Broome. I mean, Broome could win over 10, couldn't he? He's a very, very classy horse over 10. So, yeah, I always smirk a little bit when they say, "Oh, like a finer, quicker model."
Yeah, I know exactly. I mean, to be honest, in the tipping stakes, I'm certainly a more slow and cumbersome beast than Jack is at the moment.
Well, you've tipped a winner. You tipped a winner, Tom. So there you go. You're not exactly bottom of the pile so far. Yeah.
I can almost guarantee you, I'm going to be bottom of the pile by the end of the season, though. Although that's not the attitude. Come on, got to have a
exactly.
bit more positive spirit. Yeah, I've got to say, I was really, really taken by Military Order as well. I loved what William Buick said after the race, that track just wasn't going to suit him. That scenario wasn't really going to suit him, but he still won. I think he beat a pretty good horse in Waipira, and Ed Walker was delighted with that run from him. So, yeah, I think a really good effort from Military Order, and I'd be having him towards the top of the market for the Derby for sure. But we've got loads to look forward to, haven't we, lads, this week? It's such a good meeting, this York meeting. We kick off with Wednesday, the opening day, and a plethora of duels, really, to look forward to. We kick off with the Jorvik Handicap. We won't go into that. Just a quick word on that race is the fact that William Haggis has trained the winner of this race for the last 2 years running, and this year has got another favourite, and it's in the same colours as his last two victors of Sheikh Ahmed Al Maktoum, those yellow and black famous silks. So La Yakel is the horse in question with Tom Marquand up top. Surely that is worth keeping an eye on. We're going to move on, though, to the Duke of York and discuss first. This is pretty much a Group 1, chaps, isn't it, in all but name? I mean, it's such a good race this year. They've drawn some proper top notches, and I can't wait to see plenty of these sprinters coming back and showing what they can do this season. Jack, start with you on this. What a great race this year.
Yeah, it's great to see Highfield Princess back at York. Creative Force in there, adding a bit more depth as well. Emiratiana as a class act. I think for Highfield Princess, it's just a nice starting point. It's the local track, The Nunthorpe's going to be the key aim for them, of course. Under a penalty, I think she's a little bit vulnerable first time up as well. I wouldn't be looking at her as a betting proposition here. I know Joey's a big fan of him as well, but Creative Force for me here. As I say, he's a class act. He's went and won there 4 or 5 days ago. It's quick enough to come back again, but Charlie Appleby went and ran a Blue Point at the Royal Meeting there a couple of seasons ago, a 4-day gap. Not a problem with these sprinters at all. I'm a little concerned about stall 10 and the way the pace will work out here. But that was a real confidence booster at Haydock. I thought he won really well. And I thought at the prices, he has hardened again into about 7-2, 3-1, which is around the limit of where I would go down to. And I think he's probably the way I'm going to kick off the Dante Meeting this season.
Okay, nice. Joe, Jack mentioned there Creative Force. You've been a big fan of his for quite some time, haven't you?
Yes, I love this horse. I love him a lot. Me and Jack share a real admiration for him. I looked after his mother for a long time in her final sort of year, her last kind of final days. She was a lovely, sweet old horse. She had so much character, as did her final filly, who's somewhere in Ireland now, probably going to be a really nice broodmare going forward. But she was a delight to handle. We give a lot of criticism to people like Godolphin John on Twitter, but he's put up a lot of good content of Creative Force over the years when he looked after him. There's such characters. I'm a big fan. And also he's got bucket loads of ability, hasn't he? On his day, he can really, when he puts it all together, he can win these Group 1s with a bit of cut in the ground. That'd be a little bit of a worry, like a little bit of softer ground for him. But the other day, he literally looked like he could go round again. It took hell of pulling up at Haydock, and that shows some real well-being. I think he'll come into this race, as you say, with Highfield Princess. She was short yesterday. She's drifting now, and he was a lovely each-way bet, wasn't he? But you're kind of having to really plump for him now. I really like him. I think he's got a hell of a chance. Of the others in there, I do like Marshman. I think Marshman's the kind of horse at York that he can just get out in front, and he's got such searing pace that he'll be hard to peg back. So although draw 10, I can see him jumping well, being prominent, and I think you'll have a really good run for your money anyway, like around the 3-1 mark. So yeah, he'll be a tip for me at that. If he goes much shorter than 3-1, as Jack says, I wouldn't be as interested anymore. But yeah, no, I like the horse a lot.
Yeah, great stuff. I think it's such a good race. Really looking forward to it. I'm going to do something a little bit rogue, actually, because I think personally, Highfield Princess is going to come back and make a winning appearance here. I think the race is going to set up perfectly for her, because I think Marshman will go out and try and make it like he has done in his last few starts, like he did at Chantilly last time. And my one concern about him, really, and it has been for a while, is I'm not sure how well he sees out that 6-furlong trip properly. So I think he's the type who is going to try and make the running here and possibly get picked off late by Highfield Princess. So I'm actually going to go with an exactor in that. I think Highfield Princess to beat Marshman would be a very nice way to go, because I think they're two sprinters will take all the beating in that. And I think there are a few question marks about the rest of them. I would be keen on Emirati Anna, but I just feel first time up, his record isn't great. And that
just
really
needs a run, doesn't he?
Yeah,
just needs a run.
Yeah, that would put me off a little bit, to be honest. And he's a 7-year-old, so we've seen him first time up for a few seasons now, and he's never won. So yeah, I think he'll probably need this a little bit.
And is that a tip, Tom? Is that a tip, Tom, or is that an opinion? I think that's what we want to be more clear with going forward, don't we? What we're tipping and what is just an opinion on a race. So is that a tip? Are you putting up an exacta as your first solid tip on Flat Out?
I am.
Punchy stuff.
It's gonna be a tip. Yeah, why not? Why not? If it comes off, I'll be a genius.
Both me and Jack will be tipping Creative Force at 3-1.
Nice, lovely stuff. Great. Well, let's move on to the Musidora Group 3 of Oman 2.5, and we've got Infinite Cosmos heading the market, Richard King's got some Michael Stapp, very impressive last time at Newmarket. Joey, what do you think of the race this year?
I think it's a decent race. I mean, obviously, Infinite Cosmos is, I think, a lot of people's idea of the outside of the O'Brien filly, the one to be with in the Derby. In the Oaks, of course. For me, I was a little bit underwhelmed at Newmarket last time. I just think she changes her legs a lot. She didn't look that balanced. She didn't look. I'm not sure whether she will turn out to be the classiest of the classy. So she left me with a few doubts. I think it's a difficult race, but I wouldn't quite be giving up on Soul Sister just yet. I know she ran a horrible race last time on heavy ground, but she's one I think's got a lot of ability. I was speaking to Rab Havlin this week as you were, Tom. I wasn't speaking to him. You were speaking to him. I've been in the TRL editing dungeon in here all afternoon, editing this wonderful episode that's coming out on Wednesday night. But no, I think they still retain a lot of ability, and although they don't have a real standout this year, I do think Soul Sisters has more ability than she's shown this time. I don't know about you, Jack. I think you were of a similar opinion.
Look, pedigree, and that does suggest that she's no type. The Gosens have such a good record in the race, and at this moment, there's no real standout for them. They do have to do it Newbury, Inner Space, and LeMay. I think I'd certainly be more interested in seeing what they do on Saturday. They obviously won the race last year with Nashwa. She went close. She didn't quite stay, but I think that's probably the race they're kind of thinking. Soul Sister, I'm not sure. I think she's got quite a bit to find now, and I would be quite surprised if she turned out to be their Oaks filly. I do like Infinite Cosmos. She was quite green at Newmarket, so to go and win there, I thought it was a really nice performance. I think she's a general 7-1 for the Oaks, and I expect her to come and win. Yeah, I think it's quite a winnable race, and to be honest, I can't really see past Save the Last Dance. I was wildly impressed with her at Chester, and I've been impressed with what I saw from this Infinite Cosmos so far. So if she goes and wins, I think those are the two. The Oaks one is going to come from one of those two at the moment, but we'll have to see what happens tomorrow.
I'd be surprised if, personally, if Infinite Cosmos had as much class as Save the Last Dance. But yeah, that's just a thought. Just that she spent a lot of time in the air. She was just she had a way of moving that just didn't strike me of being the classiest. But there we go. We'll see. We'll see in time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think, what I love about Infinite Cosmos is that, Michael knows the family so well, and I'm hoping that she can come along really nicely. I haven't got a tip in this race. My opinion would be that I think it'll take a good one to get past Novakai, because she sets a pretty high standard of a mark of 113. And I'd expect her to be suited by the step up in trip as well. So I think whatever gets past Novakai and beats her, if it's done well, then deserves to have a pretty good chance in the race. One thing I would say about Gather Ye Rosebuds, who's a lot shorter than in the betting that I thought she'd be, is that race she won at Newbury, I remember that day, and it was soft ground in the going description, but it was riding so slow. I mean, they were finishing strung out like the washing the entire afternoon, and I'd take that form with a pinch of salt, because she won 9.5 lengths, but she was the only one really left going at the very end. So that would be my thoughts on her. I think she's probably going to be up against it on slightly quicker ground.
Yeah, I like Novakai as well. I mean, I think commissioning would have won the Oaks myself. I think she was that was the race I think she would have won. I think she looked like a mile was only going to be the bare minimum for her, and she hit those flat spots. And I think she strode exactly like you'd like a 1.5 mile filly to stride. She had a lot of class, a bit more class than the likes of Infinite Cosmos probably do have. And no, she would have been my idea, and I was very, very upset to see her injured. That was a real shame.
Yeah, such a big shame. And Rab Havlin was equally as upset, wasn't he, when we saw him last week?
Yes, he was. Good on. How many mentions is Rab going to get on this? I don't know.
Oh, a few more.
We'll get a few more in there.
Yeah.
He was fantastic, wasn't he? He was absolutely fantastic. Brilliant.
Well, I think everyone listening now did Rab give anything for the week ahead at York, or was he get one horse to follow the season? Nobody asked him, or
no? Well, we did. That's what I mean. He did have a favourable word for Soul Sister. He did like Soul Sister, and he did like a filly called Ananda. Who I really, really like. I really like Ananda. And he said when she comes back, he thinks she's got a hell of a lot of ability. So there's a couple for you, devoted, flat out early listeners, you early birds.
Did he like a rest at all? What was his thoughts of him? Obviously, that was the morning of that race.
What would you say to that, Tom? I mean, you were interviewing him. You did ask him about a rest. I don't think he didn't make so many sounds to suggest he thought he was a superstar.
Yeah, that was actually the one question we had to record again, because I think I called the horse a dress or something. And
a dress or a test or something.
A test or something like that, yeah. And then second time last week, I got it right eventually. We had some thoughts on a rest. He just said it was a really nice prospect to look forward to the season, but I wouldn't say he was overly excited about him. I think that's pretty fair.
I don't think he's done anything wrong. To me, he almost strikes me as more of a Ledger type. But no, I don't see what he did wrong there. Chesty's going to go to Epsom with a live chance as long as it's on the easier side of good, which it should be. And certainly the way I was looking at the Derby, I thought he was the main danger. Obviously, the betting suggests that as well. But for me, I don't think Arrest done much wrong. I like his form going on last year. That would obviously bring in the Dubai Mile as well. But no, I certainly view Arrest as probably one of the big dangers.
You didn't get the feeling that his trainer fancied him that much, though, did you?
No, that's a fair point. But look, if there's anything I've kind of learned is the trainers aren't always right. I know my brother certainly isn't, and obviously Ray Willie-Taggart's got it wrong. And even on the ground, on the distance, look, we're always learning, aren't we? So
no, I totally get that. But there are like I don't think trainers are worth listening to, but there are some trainers that, you know, when you go and you kind of think, well, you've got a hell of a lot of experience. When you're talking about these real top class horses for top class races, when knowing that what a real top class 3-year-old that can win the Derby's like, you get a bit of a vibe. I think in general, listening to trainers is one of the most overrated things in kind of trying to find winners. But when it comes to finding these 3-year-olds that are lightly raced, where you don't know much about them, these guys who had loads of them, probably worth listening to a touch. But you know, there have been plenty of shot winners of classics, haven't there? So on the other hand, I do take that.
I'm just amazed that Jack's just admitted that sometimes William Haggis is wrong.
I know. Yeah,
I thought we'd say that.
Disclaimer: it's not very often. I'll put that in.
Thank God this is being recorded. Is what I thought.
Joey, what about the rest of day one? Anything else on the first day that you like?
In the last race on day one, I've been waiting for Paris Lights to be up to a mile and a half, and he gets his chance in the last race at 5:15 from York. He's by Sayuni, but he's out of a Galileo mare. He's out of Cabaret. So when you've been watching his races this year over 10, he travels nicely in these 10 furlong races, but I think he'll travel nice and easy over a mile and a half, and he'll be able to just quicken away, keep going. And off a mark of 84, I really think Bowie has finally decided that this horse needs to go up to a mile and a half. I do think that probably he's a little wider drawn than I'd like, but and there is the danger that he has in the past been slowly away. But I think with Buick booked from stall, I think he's stall 10, isn't he? Around there, I think he's going to, if he gets prominent, be able to travel into a race. And I really think those extra 2 furlongs are going to be the making of him. So, and off a mark of 84, I think there's definite scope for him to improve well past that. So yeah, Paris Lights would be a solid fancy for me on day one.
And a solid case made for opulent thoroughbreds. And Jack, what about you on the opening day? Anything else?
Yes, I wouldn't really have too much opinion in that race. It's not one I really have any strong fancies at all. But in the 4:10 earlier on the card, I do like one, O'Night, who would be my second selection on Wednesday. I think he's a very progressive colt. He's won his last 2. I don't know, he's made all. He's kind of had the run of the race. I really rate that Kempton race last time. I think I've got 4 or 5 of that in my tracker. I like the second. Main protagonist came and won at Catterick very easily yesterday. I know it was a novice stake, but he beat a decent yardstick of Haggis's. I think he's going to be rated in the low 80s. There's a horse called Hala Dubai who very nearly beat Dragon Icon at Lingfield. I think that whole race is really solid. And O'Knight went and won pretty easily. And he's in here off a mark of 89. He probably wouldn't have buckets in hand off that. But I think there's more to come. He's got stall 5, which is a good draw. I think he's around 11-1. And I'm expecting him to go well. I'll be disappointed if he's not in the frame. I think he's a really upwardly mobile type.
I'd just like to add, my eyes deceived me there from a distance. Yes, he's in stall 15, Paris Lights, which is wider than ideal, but I still think he has a decent chance.
Okay, 2 really strong cases made there. Let's move on to the Thursday, shall we? And obviously the meeting is named after the feature race on the second day, which is the Dante. And a big field, well, a fairly sized field has been assembled this year. Canberra Legend, Continuous, won't go through them all, but Epictetus, Flying Honours, Passenger, the Foxes, and then White Birch as well, all with really good chances here. And a race that I always love to watch. Joey, what do you make of the strength of it this year?
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot. I think that's the key. I mean, I think looking at the race, it's hard to say at this stage with the Derby picture in general. You know, you always get this time of year, don't you, where people they look at their Derby and they go, "Oh, this is a really underwhelming renewal of the Derby," and you go, "Jesus Christ!" I mean, like we won't know until a year afterwards because it takes time to really assess the quality of these races. So, but I think we're going to learn a lot on Thursday. Epictetus is an interesting one, Tom. I mean, how would you rank him? Do you think he's got ability? Do you think he'd stay the Derby trip?
I think he's definitely got ability, and staying the Derby trip would be a little bit of concern for me. I think. I know he was probably he had the race won when he won last time at Epsom, and the record of winners in that race isn't particularly good heading to Derby, at least in recent years.
It's a desperate trial, isn't it?
It's pretty bad, yeah. And to be perfectly honest with you, Joey, it was a pretty desperate race this year, that blue ribbon trial.
Yeah.
And I think Hedrianus, who got within half a length or 3/4 of a length towards the line, is no great shakes. So I'd be a little bit worried in terms of his ability in terms of winning the Derby, but I think he's a classy sort. And obviously he ran August Rodin 3.5 lengths in the Vertem Futurity at the end of last season. But I think on the strength of his form so far, he's got a little bit to do. So I think this is quite a big day for him, because if he's going to be a Derby contender, he'll need to win this and probably need to win it well. I'm not sure he'd have that in his locker potentially. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're really calling into the question the quality of that form, aren't you, in the Vertem Futurity now? I mean, with Holloway Boy even getting whacked the other day in conditions you'd say he would have liked in the Guineas, and he really was fairly underwhelming. So, yeah, I don't know. I think the jury's out on him. I do think that he had plenty left. I mean, in the race the other day at Epsom, he did. When Adrianus came to him, he did go again. I don't think it was the best assessment of his ability, shall we say? I think we'll learn more from this race. Passenger's an interesting one. I mean, we were looking this up earlier, Jack, weren't we? I mean, how much he's not actually entered in the Derby, and how much was it you were saying that it would cost them to supplement him?
It's going to be 85,000, and they obviously paid 14,000 to run here as well. So 99 grand just to have the privilege of running in the Derby. Obviously, the prize money here would go some way to soften the blow, but obviously he's been a late bloomer, and they're probably just here to kind of see what happens. I think Star was pressed at Lingfield by Chappers to kind of see what's the plans with Passenger, and he's obviously shown them quite a bit. Obviously they wouldn't supplement him, that's obvious, but he is one I quite like. I thought he was a good winner of the Wood Ditton. I like that form of that race as well. I think there's plenty of winners to come from that, and I think there's a lot that they're coming to the Dante. Obviously they won it with a once race horse in Desert Crown last year. This could be a nice type of course, so we'll have to see what happens. My actual pick would be the Foxes. I really like them. I thought it was a really nice introduction back in the Craven. Just blew up in the last furlong, and he drifted over to the right hand side. It's well documented. The Baldwin has always said that the Dante has been the race from. I think they probably would have had him well undercooked for the Newmarket the last day, and if anything, he will improve for 10 furlongs. He's a half to Bangkok. His breeding suggests that obviously the fact he's done all this for a bit shorter, and I take that as a big positive. he beat Flying Honours in the Royal Lodge last year. Flying Honours is the favourite here. Doesn't make sense to me that he's around well, I think generally he's 5-6 to 1. There is some standout about, but I would have him near enough favourite here. He's quite a strong fancy for me. There is a standout 33 to 1 for the Derby as well. And I really quite like him here. Yeah.
Myself, I think the Ballystacks is a really good trial. I just want to make, so the two Ulysses horses I really like. We're looking for kind of a replacement, aren't we, to Galileo? And I really think that Ulysses is a sire to keep an eye on, because they're just taking a little bit of time to come to the boil. But I think he's got some real promise to be the heir to that throne, you know. This Passenger, I really like Passenger at the Wood Ditton. I thought he looked fantastic in the paddock. He was shouting a fair bit, you know, like he was playing the big man. So he may have a little bit of temperament about him, I don't know, but in general, I really like that performance, even though the time figure wasn't a great time. But he quickened away like a real classy one, and it'd be really fascinating to see what he's like. And as I said, the Ballystacks and White Birch, I thought it was really impressive. And just because of who he's trained by, I think he's being a little bit underrated as well. You know, he's run to a higher level as anything in that race for me so far, and he's about 10 to 1 shot, and he'll probably drift out again because of a trainer that people don't really associate with winning races like this. So for me, I will be splitting my stakes between the two of those on the day. I'll just have a small bet on each one. I think those will be my two fancies.
Yeah, I completely agree with that point, Joe, you make about being trained by someone else of Aidan O'Brien's nature or such. He would be a lot shorter, for absolutely certain. It's a
cliche, isn't it? You kind of do want to just go throw up a little bit when you hear people say it, but it does ring true. It does ring true, and I do think he was, you know, that was a really, really good performance. Really, really good performance, and he'd be underrated. People don't like Greys either, do they? Oh, Greys. But you know, okay. Can you think of many Grey Derby winners?
God.
Anyone pluck one out of the ether there? I can't.
I can't even think of a grey horse that even went close.
Us sitting there in silence thinking about a grey horse that's won the Derby is probably not great content.
I'll tell you what, if you're watching this and you can think of one, please let us know in the comments.
Comment. We want interaction.
Yeah, definitely.
So, grey horse won the Derby. We'll have a 50-year-old like listener or watcher that will go, Jesus Christ, these young bucks don't have a clue what they're born, do they? And they're, the winner of the Derby in 1978.
Jack, your final thoughts on the race then, please.
Yeah, look, just coming back to the Foxes, I can't get away with them. Yeah, I think he's the value in the race. Just a side note on White Birch, his dam was a filly called Diagnostic, who was at Haggis's during my time. There's a funny story that she went and won at Chelmsford. I just want to get a profile up real quick. And Ryan Moore rode her to win at Chelmsford. And I remember I think it was 9 o'clock. Let me just quickly get the race up here. And yes, 9:15. She went and won. I think they were quite delayed, and I remember Ryan Moore saying to our travelling head girl or head lad at the time, and he said, "I'm never riding one past 8 o'clock again" or something. And I think I don't know if everyone can see the times of his rides, but apparently that was it for him. He didn't want to do anymore. I know Chelmsford just down the road from Newmarket, but no, she was a really talented filly. Very good on the all-weather again. She had a few problems, but no, it's great to see that she's produced a really good horse as well in White Birch, and I echo kind of what Joey says. It was an impressive performance, so it would be good to see him run well.
It is an interesting pedigree point in general that I do tend to look for. You do get these horses that when they're breeding, it tends that this is something that the great Malcolm Bastard actually always said to me once. He said that the first 6 foals tend to be the best ones, you know, between 6 and 9. When it gets past about, you know, the sort of 6, 7, 8, 9. When it gets past that, you tend to get a lessening in quality. Now, that's not a rule that you can just go by, obviously, but in general, those earlier ones. And so, see, she was a classy filly herself. You know, this may be the right time, and White Birch might just be the classy one that she's going to have. Just a wider, interesting point.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point, actually, Joey, to be honest. I'm going to finish by giving my selection, actually. I've got quite not a strong fancy, but a fairly decent fancy for this race. And it's a horse we haven't even talked about yet, actually. It's Canberra Legend for Danny Muscat and James Ferguson. And I loved the way that he won the field in the stakes last time out. His first start on turf, it was after a 58-day break, so of course he was coming into it with race fitness on his side. But he beat a horse called Colsai in that race, and it didn't look at all at any point really during the contest like he was going to do that. But once the turbo kicked in and his stamina really got going, he finished really potently over that mile one trip. And he's exactly the sort of horse you're going to want to see stepping up in distance. So that's, of course, what he gets in the Dante. I think he'll improve again for the Derby trip as well. But Colsai in second was quite strongly fancy for a race at Goodwood next time, conditions contest. And that was basically a match race in the end, because both he and the eventual winner, Cicero's Gift, were the best horses really going into it. And Cicero's Gift has come out of it an incredibly impressive winner. Looks a proper Group 1 horse in the making. But Colsai didn't actually get a clear run at any point during the final couple of furlongs until it was way too late. Cicero's Gift no doubt would have won anyway, but Colsai was a little bit impeded, and I think he would have finished a little bit closer. So I think that form is decent there for Canberra Legend in the field. And back in third was Killybegs Warrior, who reopposes and won't win the Dante, there's no doubt about that. But he's a solid 100-rated horse who was put in his place in the way that you'd hope a horse like Canberra Legend would be able to do. So with 2 starts under his belt and stepping up in trip, which I think he'll really suit, he looks a very uncomplicated sort, one who's got plenty of stamina and enough pace as well. I think a track like York from a track like Newmarket is going to suit him because it may be a little bit more straightforward of a track. And he looks pretty versatile in terms of running style too. So I'd be keen on Canberra Legend, to be honest. And you're looking at Epictetus rated 111, Canberra Legend 103. It wouldn't surprise me at all. It's what I love so much about the Dante. If Canberra Legend was a better horse than Epictetus. So that would be my thoughts on Canberra Legend.
Yeah, the only other test of that we've had is Galactic Jack getting whacked the other day, wasn't it? But I don't think that's a fair reflection of that form. We'll get it properly tested on Thursday.
Yeah, certainly will. And like you say, I mean, bold actor in that race as well, finished 5th. And I don't think he ran his race really, but
straight off to being gelded. There's no sympathy, is there, from the child?
No hiding place, is there? Anything else on the second day then, chaps? Jack?
Yes, so for me, in the 520 is Knockbrex. I think solid form at Pontefract. He had the run of the race, making all, but the second and third have both come out and won. I think both of them are smart horses going forward as well. In that respect, it's obviously a race to follow. Next time at Haydock, though, was actually probably a better performance. He got stuck in a pocket behind a smart winner, Gregory. I think he's very much stakes class. Knockbrex had to switch around. He stayed on all the way to the line. This is over marginally further, but the trip's fine. My little question mark would be Johnston at York. Obviously, it's now in Charlie's name. But the team's always kind of in the back of mind struggled at York. So that puts me off a little bit. But what I do like is his mark of 90. I think there's still a bit more to come there. Usually, they always have a real progressive 3-year-old that could strike up a sequence. And for me, he could well be that type. He could be the one that keeps going right through to Glorious Goodwood. They always kind of target that meeting. And he's around 7-2 here. There's only a few firms priced up. Around 3-1 would be the shortest I'd go, but I do really quite like Knockback. I think he's a progressive sort, and I'd be disappointed if he can't go close here.
Okay, lovely stuff. Joe, anything for Thursday now, or moving on to Friday?
I think we'll move on to Friday, Tom.
Yeah, sounds good. And I think we should give the Boodles Yorkshire Cup Group 2 a mention, if not an in-depth look at it, just because it's the feature race on the card. And this year, Eldarov, an interesting runner coming into it. Broome, of course, for Aidan O'Brien. Hamish is in there. Whether or not he'll run is up for debate. And then Quickthorn is the favourite at the moment. I mean, we won't go into this too much because we want to talk about Saturday as well. But Jack, any quick thoughts on this?
It's a race I'll be watching with great interest. Obviously, I want to see if there's any dangers going on to the Gold Cup for Wise Eagle. I don't think there's really a standout. It was a freakish performance from Quickthorn at the back end of last season there at the Ebor meeting. Could he replicate that? I'm not sure. I think he might have it was just a tremendous ride. Coltrane was way back in second, so I'm hoping that was a fluke. Broome is a funny horse. I don't know what to make of him. I never thought he'd go and win the last day there. And I don't know. I'll be interested to see who wins that. But
I remember cheering him home last year, Jack. When was it last year or the year before? It was last. I can't remember time. Anyway, he won the Hardwick, didn't he? And you were just the whole day to me. It's no way. I just can't have him. You can't. He wins. He goes to win the Hardwick, and I've given it all that, and he's just. We should have seen his face. Basically, it was his resting bitch face. That was all he was looking. Turned around to him just with his pint like that. That was it. That was it. Just thought you'd relive that moment, lads. There we go. Carry on, please. Please do. Any thoughts on it, Tom, yourself?
Yeah, well, thoughts on it. I think it's an interesting race, and there's plenty in there with chances. The most intriguing runner for me is Siskany for William Buick and Charlie Appleby, because he comes in here off the back of a couple of really decent runs in Meydan. Obviously, once coming behind Broome, not beaten far at all. I'm not sure he would be as palpable a stayer over the 2 mile trip as he is over the 1 mile 5.5, 1 mile 6 trip, which he gets at York. So I think that's really going to play into his hands. I think if it turns into a test of stamina, he might struggle a bit, but he's a strong traveller who does stay 1 mile 6 well. And I think he's got that upwardly mobile profile, 5-year-old coming into this in the Godolphin Blue. So he'd be an interesting runner for me. He wouldn't be a tip in itself at all, but I think he'd be a very intriguing contender for me. Joe, what do you think?
Don't have a massive view on the race, lads. I've always loved Broome. Absolutely loved Broome. I think he can really be a decent force throughout in these staying races, throughout the Youth Cup races. So no, I'm a big fan of Broome, but no real opinion on the race.
Okay. And Jack, anything else for Friday?
Not so much in the form of a tip yet. Obviously, we don't have the declarations, but I'll be really intrigued to see if Relief Rowell running the opening Marygate Stakes. If anyone follows me on Twitter, you'll saw that I put up the old Haggis's first 2-year-old runner. It's a stat I love to follow, that I would never back a 2-year-old except his first one. They generally tend to be his best juvenile of the season. Are certainly up there. The likes of Approve, Haik Bidiak, Bashara. Bashara was there when I was there. What I remember William always saying, he liked to have his 2-year-olds that run at Royal Ascot. He liked at least a couple runs, 3 runs maybe. So it's promising that he's going to get another run into Relief Rally. She's on my radar for the Queen Mary. She's around a 12-1 general shot. It'd be interesting to see what her price is. Yeah, we needed the one. Obviously, I want to have a look at the pace makeup of it. But it was a really smart debut. The 5th has come out and won since. I think there might have only been 1, maybe 2 runners come out of it. So the form, it's hard to judge yet, but the 5th has come out and won. The Marygate, it's a night in the programme. I think Signora Cabello won this in 2018. So, no, she looked really smart, and hopefully she can kick on from here and make it 2 from 2, and we'll go to the Queen Mary for a real shout as well.
Really nice, interesting point there ahead of the Royal Ascot Queen Mary contest. And Joey, anything else from York at all for the 3 days? Or are we happy to move on?
I'm happy to move on, Tom.
Saturday is obviously away from York, but we've got some intriguing racing across the country. But obviously the most exciting stuff and the most prestigious stuff comes from Newbury. We've got the Lockinge meeting headlining what is a really good card. And also on the card is the Carnarvon Stakes, which I think we'll kick off with this 150. I know that both you and Jack, Joey, are intrigued by the presence in the race, at this stage at least, of Noble Style.
I'll feel that, yeah, definitely. I mean, I thought, as I said in the last one, I mean, I was amazed at what a good race he ran in the Guineas on soft ground over a mile. I mean, and that this very much I think the real positive takeout from this is that he's going to run. Most likely, he looks like he's going to run, and he's a horse who had problems last year, got a little niggle, got the colic, and at the end of the year, I think it was colic, wasn't it, Jack?
It was, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, that is neither here nor there. I mean, that's just could happen to any horse. So, I think it's great to see that he's got the well-being to come straight out so quickly. It'll be a nice stepping stone, hopefully, for the Commonwealth, which is obviously the race that I think his season is going to be based around, and so he won't be a betting proposition this weekend, but I just want to see him go and win impressively over 6 furlongs, because I think that's exactly where we're going to see the best of him. So yeah, that would be my opinion.
And Jack, I know that you're pretty intrigued to see him out so quickly as well.
Yes, not too much to add to what Joey says there. I thought it was interesting that they're running him again so soon. The kind of fallout from that James Doyle I mentioned in the last episode there, that he's been kind of a poor workhorse. They've obviously been quite happy with him since. No trouble bringing him out so soon. Obviously, just harking back to the Gimcrack form last year, he beat Cold Case and Marshman there. It was, I think I mentioned this the last time as well, but it was one of the performances of the season for me. And I've always viewed him as the Commonwealth Cup horse. And he's not a proposition. He's already a shade of odds on. But it was annoying. I just checked the Commonwealth betting there, and he's into around a 6-1 shot. And I would actually go ahead and back him there already at 6-1. I always kind of viewed him for this race. And maybe not a betting proposition on Saturday. You hope he goes and wins, but certainly for the Commonwealth Cup at Royal Ascot.
Yeah, I would echo that myself as well. I really would echo that myself. I think I was amazed it didn't actually get more hype, that performance, because as I say, coming from off the pace there, it's going to be so difficult to do. And those horses on the front end were really high quality horses that we know are high quality horses. And he gave them like 6 lengths out the back, and he was rotten keen. And then he's travelled along there and quickened off really sharp fractions to go and win and stayed to the line. I think he'll stay 7 if he wanted to, but I think 6, he's just got all the pace for 6 to be a top class sprinter.
I think the Commonwealth Cup could be one of the races of the season at this rate, couldn't it?
Incredible. What isn't going there? Isn't it?
I know. Well, whatever wins that is going to have to be a proper tool. Right, lads, moving on to the feature race of the day on Saturday, then. That is the Yorkshire Cup Lockinge Stakes. Group 1, Modern Games heads to the market at the moment. Laurel in there, the filly, Frankie and John and Thady Gosden. My Prospero, Tom Marco and William Haggis. Tribalist, of course, Mikhail Barcelona, Andre Fabre, then Jadumi, Musidora Stakes, Light Infantry, Chindit, Check and Challenge, Cash, Triple Time, and then a few others at bigger prices as well. This is obviously not final declarations yet, but I imagine most of these horses are going to run. And Jack, I think we've, at the moment, assembled a pretty decent field for this.
A decent field, a competitive field. I'm not sure it's a vintage renewal. I think there's question marks on absolutely all of them. I was absolutely devastated when I saw that Sacred was declared for Lingfield, because she's been a long-range fancy of this race for me. She loves Newbury, but most importantly, she loves quick ground, and it is going to be on the easier side of good. Conditions obviously thought, well, we'll go to Lingfield, scoop that pot. It was really annoying, though, because if it had been quick, I would have been all over her. Modern Games, you went to America, you beaten, he was a bit disappointing there. He's on a little bit of a retrieval mission. Laurel, she's the one with the potential star quality. I think she still might have a bit to prove. I'm not 100% certain. Is she only here because Inspiral's not running? It's been quite quiet on that front in terms of Inspiral was always kind of coming here. And then, oh no, we're going to go to Royal Ascot. So I'm not certain that's always been the plan.
I think just on that, Jack, don't want to interrupt, but yes, I think just on that, I remember when she won at Kempton last time on a reappearance. I think they did say
they said that she's not going to go to the Lockinge after that.
Yeah, and I think that was that's obviously not the case.
So and it's fair enough for them to have a rejig. It's actually turned out, obviously, it's cut up quite a bit. I'm still not certain My Prospero will run. What I was told is that he's going for the Tattersall's Gold Cup. Obviously, he was going to run at Ascot there the other day. Whether he's still a certain run here, I'm not so sure. Tribalist, soft ground is what he needs. Can't have Musidora Stakes. He's a first time out at Newmarket job. Judumi would be the one that I'm kind of warming to. I'm not certain he has that star quality that we mentioned earlier, but he has certainly transformed for a Geldon operation. He's 3 from 4 since then. He was 3rd in the QE2. That's his only beat since then. Obviously, he's closely matched therefore with Modern Games, who is obviously the favourite to Judumi, who's around the 7-8 to 1 mark. I would stop short of putting him up yet, but he's certainly the one who gives me the most interest at this stage. What do you think, Joey?
Well, I mean, I really like Laurel. And I think for all the reasons you've said there, she's a bet, basically. I mean, I think you are scratching around there, and I can see the Jadumi case to some degree. I just think Laurel's got a lot of ability, and if she turns up on the day here, this is very winnable. Her Sun Chariot worked out as in the sense that was quite winnable too, but she hasn't had much experience. It came at the end of last year. She'd put fire in some really fast sectionals. I mean, her closing one sub 11 seconds at Kempton the other day in the Snowdrop Fillies Stakes. I think there's a fair case to be made that these aren't going to take a hell of a lot of beating on the day. So yeah, you always want to know things like draw and what the ground's going to be like. It looks like it's going to be fairly nice ground, but at this stage, I'm happy to row in and say that she's a bet for me, Laurel. 4 to 1 if you can get it. 7 to 2 will go in the ledger because it's widely available. So yeah, 7 to 2. She's a bet for me for the Lockinge. Just as I say, because it doesn't look like there's a hell of a lot of depth to it. I would completely agree about Musidora Stakes. I think that was his day. He's got a fairly easy lead there on the rolling mile, favours those front runners. And I think in this, she can travel into it. And Rab probably hit the front a little bit too soon in the Sun Chariot. So I don't know. I think maybe they'll just wait just a little bit longer. But the only worry would be around, I think she does like to go around a bend and that sort of thing. I think that sort of race does suit her. But that would be my only concern.
Just on Laurel, actually, Joey, I'm completely in agreement with you. I think she's a monstrous filly in the making. I loved watching her at Kempton. She wasn't fully tuned up for it, but she's a proper bull of a filly. She's massive, and she travels so strongly in her races as well. I think she's really exciting, and they haven't made any secret for the regard in which they hold her. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing her taking on these males and some of the older horses as well.
And she might not take to it. She might not take it to it, might she? But you look at her and you think, with what a unit she is, you don't think it's going to be any problem, do you?
I think personally, I think it'll suit her. I think it'll suit her. The one worry I would have about Modern Games is that I know he won the Poule d'Essai des Poulains on good to soft ground, and he's run well on good
class pronunciation. That's just...
I don't know about that. But I know he won that on good to soft ground, and I know that he's run well on good to soft as well in the QE2 last year behind Bayside Boy. But on the balance of his form, you'd have to say that quicker ground is ideal for him. If he really wants to produce his best, he needs it good to firm or even firm, which he's had in America. So that would be my slight concern, because even though he can be very good when there's a little bit of cut in the ground, I don't think he's quite as powerful on that kind of ground. So maybe it gives the others a bit of a chance.
Just one more I'd add, Tom, is I'm really looking forward to seeing Wanese back out, and I'm hoping he's going to run at Newbury on Saturday. He was in at York in the week, but they're going to opt for a Newbury, maybe a bit of nicer ground. He does like a little bit of cut, I would say. He disappointed very much in the Lincoln last time, but you'd want double figure price. But here's him winning at Haydock. He showed a lovely turn of foot. The way he travelled through the race, he quickened away, he was prominent, and I'm hoping he can do the same if he's declared at Newbury on Saturday. As I say, you'd want a double figure price to compensate you, though, and you'd have to have a look at the makeup of the race. But I do really quite like him.
Cool. That pretty much sums up, I think, this week's episode. Plenty to enjoy this week at both Newbury and, of course, at York as well. So very much looking forward to all that. Just a message, please gamble responsibly and gamble within your means. It's always supposed to be fun. And when the fun stops, do stop. Please be gamble aware. Thanks very much for watching. See you all again soon.